turn for the auto sector. The auto sector has complained about two things. Number one, underlying demand of commodity prices and underlying sluggishness in the rural economy are both getting addressed because of this twin bonanza what hopefully auto companies have got. Let's take that conversation forward with Shashank Srivastava. He represents India's biggest auto company, that's Maruti Suzuki. Shashank, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Really, after a while, there is frankly good news for the auto industry. So let's start this interaction with a smile and with some zing in your voice. Can you tell us the immediate benefit?
Well, the immediate benefit seems to be two. One is on the fuel prices. The cost of running obviously comes down, especially for those consumers at the lower end of the spectrum who are very sensitive to the running cost. So that's obviously a very positive for Maruti Suzuki and for industry in general, because consumer sentiments for auto purchase is affected a lot by the running cost of the vehicle. So that's one good point. And second, of course, is the expected steel price, which should come down given some of the restrictions on the export. So that is something which is a positive. And as you know, material cost in any auto OEM, roughly about 77% of the cost structure. So and steel is a very important part of that material cost. So I think those two are immediate positives for the industry going forward.
Percentage of the total raw material cost, how much is steel? And if one works an assumption that steel prices come down, what happens to this quarter margins?
So I'm not really sure what exact percentages, because I think our materials and the finance guys are the best guys to answer that question. However, it is substantial. And normally the steel contracts are done quarter-wise. And generally, the effect of any decrease in the spot prices of steel in contract prices happens with the lag of a quarter. So yes, it is possible within a quarter, but subsequent quarters, you'll see the full effect.
So whatever price benefits you will get, are you likely to retain them? Because there is also a impact of demand or slowdown in demand which has happened in the auto companies. Are you likely to pass it on, or are you likely to retain it?
Yeah, so we haven't really come to any conclusion on that. However, I must say that the commodity prices, generally speaking, are very high. By the way, when we talk about this euphoria of the steel prices likely to come down, you must remember that about a year and a half back, they were just at about, and I'm talking of CR steel, it was about 38 rupee kg. It went up to 77, 78, and this quarter expected to be 83, 84. But with this news, probably the spot prices will come down, maybe in that 77, 76 mark again. But then when you compare it with the what it was, which was 38 rupee a ton, a kg, obviously it is still quite high. So profitability is still under pressure, I would say, and therefore there is no clear-cut decision on the possible scenario that you put your question on.
How sensitive is a car buyer about fuel prices? Do you think there is a direct correlation which you've seen in the past? Every time fuel prices have gone higher, it has impacted demand?
No, so we haven't seen a direct correlation, because obviously the overall impact on the demand is not just fuel prices, but a host of other things. So in economic terms, as you know, car buying is a discretionary purchase, and that means the disposable income matters a lot. So directionally, if you are spending more on essential items like fuel or rent or clothes or food, then obviously your disposable income comes down. But remember that effect of running costs is different across different segments of the industry as far as consumers are concerned. So on the lower end, there would be obviously a much more elasticity in terms of the running cost as compared on the higher end, where the elasticity is maybe low as regards to running cost. So there is no special this thing that a general answer we can give. But directionally, yes, running cost reduction boosts the sentiment across all segments. And in fact, functionally, it boosts the demand on the lower end of the spectrum.
Are semiconductors issues finally getting sorted?
It's getting better, but yes, as we have said before, and when we were announcing the annual results very recently, we said that we are seeing the problem continuing, and we have said that in this quarter also there has been an effect on because of the semiconductor non-availability. Going forward, I think it's very difficult to predict when it will become 100% normal, because it's quite complex, but it does appear that it is getting a little better now.
I'm going to quote Mr. Bhargava here, and his comment when he said, "The butter from the bread is missing," in a sense, stirred all of us. Do you think that is a function of a shift in the Indian car buyer, where the car buyer is moving up the value chain, or this is something which you think is a permanent shift? What I'm trying to understand from you is that last couple of quarters have been tough for the entry level sector. Is that a cyclical trend because what has happened after COVID, or that is the new way how the customer preference have moved?
So actually, if you see immediately after the COVID, this segment grew. It did not decrease. It actually went up as a percentage of the total industry. And we are talking of percentage of the total industry because overall the industry also shifted down in 1920, and 2021 also roughly similar to 1920, and 21-22 was a growth. So it was only in the last year that we found the entry segment coming down a little more sharply than in the past. So we believe that is obviously a function of the affordability. As far as the Indian demography is concerned, you would always have, and we are a very young nation, you would always have a large percentage of first-time buyers, and they have been consistently 47-48% first-time buyers from the last 22 years. So that hasn't changed. That's the nature of our demography. And therefore, I would expect first-time buyers to keep coming. It's only a matter of affordability. And that affordability is affected by, as we have seen, of course, the cost of vehicles going up, or regulatory requirements, or taxation, or insurance going up, or road tax registration going up. Because this sector, the elasticity of demand with respect to prices, the cost of acquisition is pretty high. So that has been the primary reason. It's not as if the demand is disappeared. It is only of how best to fructify the demand. And that means that companies would have to look at their cost structures more closely, especially for this segment.
So if we are in for a good monsoon, and if commodity prices, they stabilize at the current juncture with a downward bias, should shareholders expect that in the second half of this year, they would be served with bread and a lot of butter?
So I don't know about that bread or how much butter, but definitely, I mean, it's just while we cannot really give any forward guidance, but I think the bread will be toasted better.
Okay, glad to hear that. So if I read in between lines, and it's almost lunchtime for me, so this conversation is also making me hungry. Can I safely say that the worst of the demand pressure and the worst of the margin pressure, if commodity prices, they don't go higher, and if they stay where they are with a downward bias, that is certainly behind Maruti?
Really, I can't give that forward guidance, except to say that while it's lunchtime, toasted bread normally you will have in breakfast, so you'll have to wait till breakfast time.
So what are the health delicacies we should expect for shareholders? Shareholders talk about margins, they talk about cash flow, they talk about market share, they focus on all the other aspects. So what are the health benefits which we should expect, or health servings we should expect?
Of course, the servings, and one of the things which consumers accept is to have more variety on the breakfast table, and we would definitely be serving some of those varieties which have been missing in our overall portfolio. So you could have more dishes of different types, and definitely Maruti Suzuki always looks at how healthy the dish is when it is being served to the consumers.
That final question, and I've admired Maruti for the following: innovation. First small car with AC, first small car with a power window, first small car with a power steering. You managed to move up the value chain in the sedan market very well. But somehow that innovation in last couple of years, whether it's on the EV front or whether it is on innovation front, is missing. How would you defend that? And that's not my view. That's a view which is becoming more like a common view which I'm getting from shareholders also.
Yeah. So I'll be happy to answer that. You're right. We have been first movers in most of the categories, including the smaller MPV category. Remember, Innova was a very large MPV at that time when we moved into Ertiga. People said it may not. We had the Swift, which was the premium hatch at that time. People said you had the Zen, you had the Alto. Who will buy your Swift? Same with Baleno. Same with Brezza, by the way, which is an SUV. So in fact, we are the first people with success in SUV, for your information. In the entry SUV, when Brezza came in 2016, and still the market leader, it was thought that the small SUVs won't sell, but they did, and others followed. So the innovation didn't really stop. Yes, you are right. If you look at the mid SUVs, where we have the S-Cross, also a first mover, by the way. 2016 was the S-Cross, but unfortunately, probably our market positioning wasn't great, and it hasn't done great numbers. As far as EVs are concerned, yes, we have to look at the entire ecosystem. It's not about product innovation; it's also about the entire ecosystem and making it convenient to consumers. We have two big barriers in EVs at the moment: the cost of acquisition and also the charging infrastructure, which is leading to range anxiety among consumers. So while the optics, as you said, may be a little messy for us, but I must say we always look at the consumer convenience when whatever technology it is. And I can tell you, if there in 100 out of 100 times, we will look at the customer focus and customer convenience rather than the optics.
I'm just tempted to ask you with one more last question, the last one. We are going through a uptick in agrarian demand and agrarian pricing. Now, typically when agrarian inflation is there, the rural demand will always stay high because the rural economy is dependent on ultimate agrarian demand in terms to generate disposable income. Interest rates are low. I've been told by channel checks that the rural real estate prices have also gone higher, whether it is in small town or land prices, farmland prices. If the factors are supporting agrarian economy and agrarian demand, why is the auto sector suffering because of low rural demand?
I think on the auto sector, especially, I think you're referring to the two-wheelers when you say suffering of demand for the auto. But as far as Maruti Suzuki is concerned, our growth in rural areas has been higher than in the urban areas. Therefore, for four-wheeler, I think this is maybe not a true statement. And agrarian demand has been going up. In fact, been always higher than urban demand. The rural demand is always higher than urban demand. I have seen it for the last 17 years. There's been only 1 year, which was, I think, 2012 or 13, when the rural demand in terms of growth was less than the urban growth. So it's always been good. In fact, last year also, Maruti Suzuki is in the overall portfolio. Our rural portfolio was about 43% against 42% the previous year, which means that it outpaced the urban growth. So, and then there are many reasons for it. There has been a lot of investment in the rural sector by the government, infrastructure investment. Also, there have been regular monsoons. I mean, monsoons have been normal last 3 years. You have good water reservoirs if you look at the long-term averages. We have had record Rabi sowing even this year. Kharif output has been good. MSPs are higher. Kharif just last month came down a little bit because of the excessive heat which was there. But otherwise, it seems to be on the right track. For the two-wheelers, though, I think the story has been opposite. And I think, although I'm not an expert on two-wheelers, but I think the running cost, which is reflected in the fuel price going up, is probably they are more sensitive to the running cost, that segment. And that may explain the reason for a decline in the rural sector for the two-wheelers.
Really appreciate your time. Glad you could join us. And good to see that Zing is back I'm sure Achhe Din will also come back for the auto sector. It's been a couple of challenging quarters, nevertheless, for the entire auto industry per se. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.